My stepmom forced me to hand over my entire paycheck or live on the street, but she never knew I held the secret that ruined her life. So I, 19 female, have been living in this total nightmare situation with my dad, 49 male, stepmom Elizabeth, 47 female, and her 3 demon spawns. Okay, they're just regular kids, ages 8, 6, and 3 or 4, but still annoying as ever. Ever since my dad married this woman 4 years ago, my life basically turned into some twisted version of Cinderella, minus the happy ending and fancy dress, just the endless chores and emotional abuse. Lucky me, Elizabeth has always treated me like I'm her personal maid nanny hybrid. Like, I'm not even joking. I'd come home from school and there'd be a list of chores waiting for me while she'd be chilling on the couch, scrolling through her phone, probably liking posts about being a bonus mom or whatever BS term stepmoms use these days to make themselves sound less evil. And my dad, total pushover, he'd see what was happening and just shrug it off with some lame "we're family, we help each other out" excuse, as if making your biological daughter clean the bathroom while your stepkids get to play video games is the definition of family bonding. Thanks, Dad. The worst part is that I couldn't even focus on my college applications because I was always watching her kids or cleaning up after them. My grades started slipping in my senior year, and when I tried to talk to my dad about it, Elizabeth would butt in and say something like, "Well, maybe if you weren't so lazy and managed your time better," as if I was the problem. Meanwhile, she somehow had time for weekly manicures and brunch with her friends while I was stuck at home teaching her 6-year-old how to read, because apparently that's not her job, even though she pushed them out. I ended up having to take a gap year after high school because I couldn't get my stuff together in time for college applications. That just made everything worse, because now I was home all the time, which meant in Elizabeth's mind I was available 24/7 for whatever she needed. Need someone to pick up the kids from school? Call me. Need someone to make dinner because you're just so exhausted from your part-time job selling houses? I'm your girl. Need someone to watch the kids on a weekend because you and Dad want couple time? Guess who's not allowed to make plans? It wasn't always this bad. The first year after they got married, Elizabeth actually tried to bond with me. She'd take me shopping or invite me to get my nails done with her. But then I realized she was just buttering me up so Dad would think she was the perfect stepmom. The second she got pregnant with kid number 1, my half-brother, the mask came off. Suddenly I wasn't the bonus daughter anymore, I was the live-in help. My friends noticed the change too. They stopped asking me to hang out on weekends because they knew the answer would always be, "Sorry, I have to babysit." My best friend Elena would sometimes come over just to keep me company while I watched the kids, but Elizabeth didn't like that. She said Elena was distracting me from properly supervising the children. Translation: if I was having any fun while babysitting, I must not be doing it right. The house itself became a physical representation of my position in the family. My room, the smallest bedroom in the back of the house that used to be the home office. Meanwhile, the kids each got their own rooms with cute themes and new furniture. My bathroom, shared with all 3 kids, which meant it was constantly covered in toothpaste and smelled like someone missed the toilet. Well, someone always missed the toilet. And God forbid I leave a single hair product on the counter. Elizabeth would text me at school about how I needed to keep my things organized, while her makeup was allowed to cover every inch of her and my dad's ensuite bathroom. My relationship with my dad deteriorated pretty quickly after he married her. We used to be close, especially after my mom passed away. For a few years it was just me and him against the world. We had movie nights, he came to all my school events, and he even tried, and hilariously failed, to learn how to braid my hair for picture day. Then Elizabeth came along, and suddenly I was an afterthought. The real kick in the teeth was watching him parent her kids so much better than he parented me. He'd get down on the floor and play with them for hours, help them with their homework, take them to the park, all things he stopped doing with me once Elizabeth entered the picture. I tried not to be jealous of literal children, but come on, it hurt seeing him be super dad to them while barely acknowledging my existence, except to ask why I hadn't done the dishes yet. I tried talking to him about it a few times. The first time he actually seemed to hear me. He apologized and promised to make more time for just the 2 of us. We had exactly one father-daughter lunch after that conversation before Elizabeth found a way to make sure it never happened again. She started scheduling family activities whenever my dad suggested he and I do something together. And of course, I was expected to participate in family time, but also somehow do all my chores and watch the kids if they got bored. Multitasking at its finest. By the time I graduated high school, I was basically just a ghost in my own home. I'd wake up, make breakfast for the kids, clean up their messes, do whatever chores Elizabeth had assigned me, maybe squeeze in some job applications if I was lucky, pick the kids up from school, help with homework, make dinner, clean up after dinner, put the kids to bed, and then collapse in my room for a few hours of peace before doing it all again the next day. Weekends were even worse because the kids were home all day. My only escape was my part-time job at the mall. I worked at this little clothing boutique. I'd pick up extra shifts whenever possible, and I'd stash most of my paycheck away in a secret bank account Elizabeth didn't know about. My plan was to save enough to get my own place, or at least enough for a security deposit on an apartment with roommates. I just needed a few more months of saving and I'd be free. But of course, Elizabeth had to ruin that too. She found out how much I was making and suddenly decided I should be contributing to the household since I was an adult now. So on top of being their unpaid nanny and maid, I now had to give them $200 a month for rent, as if watching her hell spawn for free wasn't payment enough. I swear this woman was put on this earth specifically to make my life miserable. That's pretty much how things were going until last month, when everything finally came to a head. I've been putting up with Elizabeth's crap for 4 years, watching my dad turn into her puppet, and being treated like the help instead of family. I was at my breaking point, and all I needed was one final push to snap. Elizabeth, being the thoughtful person she is, was happy to provide that push, and boy, did she push me right out the door. So fast forward to last month. I've been planning this night out with my best friends Elena and Hugo for weeks. It was Elena's birthday, and we were going to hit this new club downtown that everyone's been talking about. I even bought a new outfit with the money I'd been saving for my part-time job at the mall. The whole fit cost me like half a day's pay, but Elena's been my ride or die since middle school, so it was worth it. The day of, I made sure to tell both my dad and Elizabeth about my plans like 2 weeks in advance. They both nodded and said it was fine. My dad even seemed happy that I was finally getting out of the house, as if I'd been hibernating in my room by choice and not because I was constantly working or babysitting. I spent all week looking forward to Friday night. It was literally all that got me through Elizabeth's constant nagging and the kids' endless messes. Everything seemed cool until literally 2 hours before I was supposed to leave. I just finished giving the kids their dinner and was about to hop in the shower when I heard the click-clack of Elizabeth's heels coming down the hallway. That sound alone is enough to give me PTSD these days. She comes strutting into the kitchen wearing this tight red dress that looked like something you'd wear to seduce someone, not to a work event. Her makeup was done to the nines, and she reeked of that expensive perfume. "Oh, you're still here," she said. "Listen, I need a favor." And that's when she dropped the bomb. She supposedly had a work party she totally forgot about and needed me to watch the kids. I was like, no way. I've had plans for weeks. Dad can watch them. I even pointed to the calendar where my plans were clearly marked. She glanced at it dismissively and goes, "Your father is working late tonight. It's just one night. Don't be a selfish brat." The audacity of this woman calling me selfish after I've basically raised her kids for free made my blood boil. I wanted to scream, but I've learned that raising my voice around Elizabeth just gives her ammunition to paint me as the unstable hormonal teenager to my dad later. Something about the way she said it seemed sus. First of all, she works as a real estate agent, and they don't have random emergency work parties on Friday nights. Her office does a monthly happy hour, but that's always the last Thursday of the month, and they plan it way in advance. Second, she was way too dressed up for a work thing. And third, my dad hadn't mentioned working late when I talked to him that morning. I tried calling my dad, but he didn't pick up. Typical. In the past year, he's gotten really bad about answering his phone when I call, but let Elizabeth or one of the kids call and he picks up on the first ring. So there I was, stuck between a rock and a hard place. If I left anyway, Elizabeth would definitely tell my dad I abandoned the kids, and I'd never hear the end of it. Plus, as much as her kids annoy me sometimes, they're still kids, 2 freaking spoiled kids. It's not their fault their mom is the devil incarnate. I couldn't just leave 3 young kids alone in the house, even though the oldest one is honestly more responsible than his mother. I texted Elena with a string of curse words and told her I couldn't make it. She called me immediately, and I had to step outside to take the call so Elizabeth wouldn't overhear. I gave her the rundown of what happened, trying not to cry out of frustration. 4 years of this crap had built up, and missing Elena's birthday celebration was the final straw. "That's such BS, Elena said, and I could hear the anger in her voice. "She's definitely not going to a work thing dressed like that." "I know," I replied, watching through the window as Elizabeth applied another coat of lipstick in the hallway mirror. "But what can I do? The kids are here, and Dad's not answering his phone." That's when Elena had this crazy idea. "What if we follow her and see where she's really going?" At first I thought it was stupid. Like, what would that accomplish? Even if she was lying, my dad would probably find some way to excuse it. He's become a master of explaining away Elizabeth's behavior over the years. But honestly, I was so mad I just said whatever. Maybe if I had actual proof she was lying, my dad would finally see her for who she really is. So the plan was, I'd stay with the kids, and Elena and Hugo would follow Elizabeth to see what this work event really was. Elena was so excited to play 007. She always had a thing for secret agents, Lamau. Hugo was just along for the ride because, in his words, this is way more interesting than a night at the club. Around 7 p.m., Elizabeth left the house, smelling like she bathed in perfume. She barely said goodbye to her kids, just yelled, "Be good for your sister." From the front door. Mother of the year, folks. I texted my friends her car description, white Lexus SUV, because of course she drives a Lexus, and which direction she headed. Then I just sat there with her kids, making them mac and cheese, and wondering if my friends would actually find anything or if I was just being paranoid. The kids wanted to watch a movie, so I put on Frozen for what felt like the millionth time. The little one, Lily, can recite the entire thing word for word, which is both impressive and incredibly annoying. As we sat there watching Elsa build her ice castle for the gazillionth time, I couldn't help but think about how different my life would be if my mom hadn't died. We'd probably be living in our old house, just me and her, and I'd be in college by now instead of playing Mary Poppins to Elizabeth's Spawn. So listen, here's where things got really interesting. About an hour into the movie, my phone started blowing up. Elena was sending me pictures and videos, and oh my god, there was Elizabeth sitting at some fancy restaurant, playing footsie under the table with some smoking hot dude who was definitely not my dad. They were holding hands across the table, and in one of the videos, they were straight up making out in the parking lot like a couple of teenagers. The guy was younger than my dad too, probably in his early 30s, and wearing what looked like an expensive suit. My heart was pounding so hard. I wasn't even shocked, TBH, more like, finally had proof of what I'd suspected for a while. Elizabeth had been working late a lot lately, and there were a few times I'd seen texts pop up on her phone that seemed pretty flirty. Once I even saw her close a chat window super quickly when I walked into the room. But seeing the actual evidence was something else entirely. It was like all the pieces suddenly clicked into place. I had to hide in the bathroom for a few minutes to process what I was seeing on my phone. Like, I knew Elizabeth was shady, but this was next level. There she was, in 4K resolution, thanks to Elena's new iPhone, straight up cheating on my dad. The pics were crystal clear too, Elizabeth giggling while this Ken dude whispered in her ear, them clinking wine glasses, and even one where his hand was definitely not visible above the table. Gross. Elena sent a text saying they were going to keep following them to see where they went after dinner. She's such a ride or die friend, I swear. She was enjoying this detective work way too much. In another life, she'd definitely be working for the FBI, I'll give her that. When I went back to the living room, Tyler, the oldest, asked me why my face was all red. Kids notice everything, I swear. I told him I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't even a lie. My stomach was doing all kinds of flips. He just nodded and went back to watching the movie but kept giving me these little concerned glances. Sometimes I forget he's only 8. He acts so grown up sometimes, probably because he's had to with a mom like Elizabeth. While the kids were distracted by the movie, I started thinking about what to do with this info. My first instinct was to call my dad right away and tell him everything, but honestly, that might backfire. I needed to be strategic about this. This was potentially my ticket out of this hellhole, but I had to play it right. My phone buzzed again with more updates from Elena. They had followed Elizabeth and her mystery man to a hotel, not some seedy motel either. We're talking about the fancy Marriott downtown where rooms are like $300 a night. Elena sent a pic of them checking in at the front desk with his arm around Elizabeth's waist. The timestamp showed it was just after 9 p.m. While I was processing all this, Hugo sent me a text saying they had done some digging and figured out who the guy was. And guess what? He works at my dad's company, in the same office building. Hugo recognized him because the dude had come into the electronics store where Hugo works part-time. So not only was Elizabeth cheating, but she was cheating with someone connected to my dad's work. The audacity of this woman knows no bounds. I asked Elena if they were still at the hotel, and she said yes. They were staking it out from the coffee shop across the street. I told her they should probably head home soon. They had already gone above and beyond, and I had all the evidence I needed. Plus, I didn't want them to waste their entire Friday night on my family drama. Elena's response, "Ha, classic her. Are you kidding? This is the most exciting thing that's happened in months. Hugo and I are living for this drama." She then sent a selfie of them sipping frappuccinos with the hotel visible in the background. At least they were having fun with their impromptu spy mission. As the night went on, I put the kids to bed. The youngest, Lily, asked when her mommy was coming home, and I just said later, because what else could I say? Your mom's busy banging someone in a fancy hotel? No, thanks. After they were all asleep, I sat in the dark living room just scrolling through all the evidence on my phone and thinking about my next move. By this point it was almost 11 p.m., and my dad still wasn't home. I texted him again asking where he was, and he finally replied saying he was wrapping up at work. So he was actually working late. That part of Elizabeth's story checked out, which was surprising. Usually she lies about everything. While I waited, Elena texted around midnight saying Elizabeth and her boy toy were still at the hotel with no signs of leaving anytime soon. Apparently they'd ordered room service, which Hugo found out by chatting up one of the hotel staff on a smoke break. My friends were really committing to this investigation, and I was grateful. Without them, I'd still be in the dark about what Elizabeth was really up to. I started thinking about all the times Elizabeth had made my life miserable. The endless chores, the babysitting, the way she'd make snide comments about my appearance or grades, how she'd tell my dad I was being difficult whenever I stood up for myself. 4 years of being treated like Cinderella. 4 years of watching my dad take her side over and over again. And now here I was, sitting in their living room with photographic evidence that his perfect wife was actually a lying cheat. I felt bad for him. Nobody deserves to be cheated on, even if they've been a disappointing dad. But then it hit me, this was karma for how he'd let Elizabeth treat me all these years. By the time I heard my dad's car pull into the driveway around 12:30 a.m., I had decided I wasn't going to show him the evidence right away. I was going to wait until Elizabeth came home, whenever that would be, and let her dig her own grave with lies about where she'd been. Then, when she thought she'd gotten away with it, I dropped the bomb. My dad looked exhausted when he walked through the door. He was surprised to see me still up. He asked about the kids and about my plans with my friends. I told him they went to the club without me because Elizabeth had a work event and needed me to babysit. He seemed confused, saying he didn't remember Elizabeth mentioning any work thing. Real subtle, Beth. Then I just said I was tired and headed to my room, telling my dad I'd talk to him in the morning. As I lay in bed, my phone kept lighting up with updates from Elena. She and Hugo had finally called it a night around 1 a.m., but not before confirming that Elizabeth was definitely staying the night at the hotel. The final piece of evidence was a picture of her hotel room window with the light still on at 1 a.m. and her car still in the parking garage. I slept like a baby that night. Elizabeth had no idea what was coming for her, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had the upper hand. Tomorrow was going to be interesting, to say the least. I woke up the next morning to the sound of the kids watching Peppa Pig downstairs. I grabbed my phone to check for any updates from Elena and saw a text she'd sent around 7 a.m. Yes, she was that committed, Lamau. Just drove by the hotel again. Her car is still there. Get ready for the showdown of the century. My friend is seriously dedicated to the next level. Who drives by a hotel at 7 a.m. just to check on someone's car? Elena, that's who. I texted her back a bunch of heart emojis and told her I'd keep her posted on whatever went down today. I could hear my dad moving around in the kitchen, probably making breakfast for the kids. He's actually a decent cook, one of the few parenting duties Elizabeth hasn't managed to push onto me. I checked the time, 9:30 a.m. Elizabeth still wasn't home. By the time I went downstairs, my dad looked worried, glancing at his phone every few minutes. I could tell he was wondering where Elizabeth was but was trying to play it cool in front of the kids. Morning, I said, grabbing a piece of toast. Any word from Elizabeth? He shook his head, looking uncomfortable. She texted early this morning saying her work thing ran late and she crashed at a colleague's place. Should be home soon. Wow. So that was her story, she crashed at a colleague's place. Technically not a lie if you consider a colleague's hotel room a place, but still pretty ballsy. I just nodded and munched on my toast, trying to hide my smirk. While my dad was distracted, I slipped back upstairs. I'd already secretly been planning to move out for months. Elena's family had a spare room they'd offered me before, but I'd been hesitating because I didn't want to leave my dad. But now, all bets were off. I started packing a bag with the essentials and a few sentimental items, like the necklace my mom gave me before she died. I texted Elena asking if her offer of the spare room was still good. She replied almost instantly with OMG yes. Mom and Dad will be so excited, followed by about 20 emojis. I had to smile at her enthusiasm. Elena's family has always been super welcoming to me, especially after my mom died. Her mom used to invite me over for dinner all the time when my dad first started dating Elizabeth, probably because she could tell I was struggling. As I was packing, I heard the front door open and close, followed by the kids screaming mommy. Elizabeth was finally home, wearing the same red dress from last night and carrying her heels in her hand. Classic walk of shame outfit. I stayed upstairs, listening to her make excuses about how her work event ran so late that she just had to stay at her coworker Melissa's apartment. I'd never heard her mention a Melissa before, which just made the lie even more pathetic. I could hear my dad asking questions, his voice getting more tense with each one. Elizabeth kept her cool though, spinning some elaborate story about a last-minute client and a big sale. She's always been good at lying on the spot. Eventually their conversation moved to the kitchen, and I couldn't hear them anymore. I finished packing my bag and hid it under my bed for now, then texted Hugo asking if he could pick me up later. He agreed. Then I sat down at my desk and started writing a note to my dad. I wanted to make sure I said everything I needed to say, since I might not get another chance once the drama started. Once I finished the note, I took a deep breath and opened all the photos and videos Elena had sent me on my phone, making sure they were ready to go. I headed downstairs, plastering an innocent look on my face. Elizabeth was in the kitchen unloading the dishwasher, probably the first chore she'd done in months. She glanced up when I walked in, giving me that fake smile she always uses when my dad is within earshot. "Morning, sweetie," she said, like we were in some 50s sitcom where stepmoms actually care. "Sorry about last night. The work thing ran so late, and I didn't want to drive home tired." I just nodded and sat in the living room where I could still see the kitchen. My dad came into the kitchen. Elizabeth immediately went over to him and gave him a kiss on the cheek, playing the devoted wife. I had to stop myself from gagging. As they were both standing there, I pulled out my phone. Then I forwarded all the pictures and videos to my dad with a simple message: "Thought you should know." I watched his phone buzz in his pocket. He pulled it out to check. I'll never forget the look on his face as he opened that first photo. His expression went from mild annoyance at being interrupted to confusion to shock to something I'd never seen before, a kind of cold, hard anger that made him look like a completely different person. Elizabeth was still chattering away about whatever, oblivious to the fact that her world was about to implode. My dad looked at me. I gave him the smallest nod, and something in his expression crumbled. Elizabeth finally noticed something was wrong and stopped mid-sentence. "What is it?" she asked, reaching for his phone. "Is everything okay?" My dad pulled his phone away from her grasp. "We need to talk. Now." That was my cue. I slipped past them and headed toward the living room where the kids were playing. The fallout was epic, like nuclear explosion level epic. I grabbed the kids and suggested we take our fort building skills to the backyard to make a super cool outdoor fort. Anything to get them away from the storm that was about to hit the kitchen. As soon as we got outside, I could hear the yelling start. Elizabeth's voice got defensive like it always does when she's caught in a lie. She started barking, "It's not what it looks like." Classic cheater excuses. While World War III was happening inside, I texted Hugo to come get me ASAP. Then I texted Elena to fill her in on what was going down. She wanted to come over too, but I told her to wait at her house. No need to add more spectators to this train wreck. After about 20 minutes of what sounded like Elizabeth throwing every excuse in the book at my dad, it was just one time. I was lonely. "He works too much, blah blah blah." There was a sudden crash, like something being thrown. That was my cue to get the kids further from the house, to the little playground at the end of our street. And they were all for it. Anything's more fun than hanging out in the backyard, especially when there's a jungle gym involved. As we were walking down the street, I glanced back at the house and saw Elizabeth storming out the front door, mascara running down her face, phone pressed to her ear. She didn't even look in our direction, just got in her car and screeched off. Good riddance. I spent about an hour with the kids at the playground. Hugo texted that he was on his way, and my dad sent a message asking where we were. I told him we were at the playground, and he replied with a simple okay. When we got back to the house, my dad was sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. The kids ran straight to him, asking where mommy was. He put on a fake smile and said she had to go out for a while but she'd be back later. No need to traumatize the kids with mommy's a cheating hoe who's probably crying to her boyfriend right now. I slipped upstairs to grab my bag. I was just heading back downstairs when my dad saw me eyeing my packed bag with a mixture of surprise and what looked like hurt. "You're leaving?" he asked. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without my voice cracking. "I've been planning to move out anyway," I finally said. This just sped things up. He asked where I would go, and I told him, "I'll move in with Elena. I can't stay here anymore, Dad." He didn't argue, which surprised me. Maybe he finally realized how miserable I'd been. "Can I still see you?" he asked, and for a moment he looked like the dad I remembered from before Elizabeth, the one who used to take me for ice cream after school and taught me how to ride a bike. "Yeah," I said, feeling a little knot form in my throat. "I'm not disappearing. I just need my own space, away from all this." He nodded again, then did something he hadn't done in years. He hugged me. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and I knew he meant for more than just today. I should have seen it. I wasn't sure if he meant Elizabeth's cheating or how she treated me all these years, but it didn't really matter. It was the first time he'd apologized for anything in a long time. When he let go, I promised to text him later. Then I heard Hugo's car horn from outside. My escape ride had arrived. The kids came running out of the kitchen, asking where I was going with my bag. I knelt down to their level and explained I was going to stay with my friend for a while, but I'd come visit them. They seemed confused but not upset, which was a relief. I gave each of them a quick hug, even telling Tyler he was in charge now, which made him stand up with pride. 4 years of being Elizabeth's personal servant, and now I was finally free. Hugo didn't ask questions when I threw my bag in his back seat, just gave me a fist bump and asked if I wanted to stop for coffee on the way to Elena's. That's why Hugo's awesome. He knows when to talk and when to just crank up the music and drive. By the time we reached Elena's house, my phone was blowing up with texts from Elizabeth. Apparently she'd gotten home to find me gone and was now cycling between rage, "How dare you turn your father against me," and guilt tripping, "After everything I've done for you." I showed the text to Hugo and Elena, and we had a good laugh at her audacity. Elena's parents welcomed me with open arms and a home-cooked meal, showing more genuine care in one evening than Elizabeth had in 4 years. Elena's mom had already set up the spare room with fresh sheets and towels. I almost cried when I saw it, but it made me feel wanted, which was something I hadn't felt in my own home for a long time. That night, as I lay in bed in my new room, my phone lit up with one last text before I fell asleep. It was from my dad. "I'm proud of you. Always have been." Simple words, but they meant everything. Maybe there was hope for us after all. And that's it for now. Reddit. I'm finally free. Thanks for reading. I'm still living with Elena's family, and they're treating me like I'm part of their family in all the ways Elizabeth never did. The first week after I left was pretty chaotic. Elizabeth blew up my phone with messages that ranged from straight up nasty, "You pathetic little bitch, this won't go unpaid," to guilt tripping. The harassment got so bad that Elena and I were literally scrolling through the messages while eating ice cream one night, reading them in dramatic voices and dying laughing. "Oh my God, listen to this one," I wheezed, barely able to get the words out. "I've always thought of you as my own daughter." "Yeah, Cinderella maybe." Elena nearly choked on her ice cream. "Please tell me you're saving these," she said. This is like the textbook definition of harassment. That's when it hit me, she was right. What Elizabeth was doing wasn't just annoying, it was actual harassment. Elena's dad overheard us and suggested I talk to his friend who's a lawyer. One quick consultation later, and I was filing for a restraining order with a stack of screenshots that the lawyer called some of the most clear-cut harassment evidence he'd seen in years. The look on Elizabeth's face when she got served with the papers at her sister's house was apparently priceless, according to the process server who seemed to enjoy his job a little too much. Nothing says welcome to your new life quite like legal documentation proving what a psycho you are. I eventually blocked her number because the emotional whiplash was exhausting. My dad, on the other hand, has been surprisingly decent about the whole thing. He called a few days after I left, and we had our first real conversation in years. He also said he'd read my letter multiple times and had no idea things had been so bad for me. Part of me wanted to be like, "Duh, it was happening right in front of your face," but I held back. Baby steps. The kids have been staying with my dad, with his mom, my grandma, coming over to help out. Apparently Elizabeth tried to take them with her to her sister's place where she's crashing, but my dad put his foot down. First time I've seen him stand up to her. On the practical side of things, I got a job at this cute coffee shop near Elena's house. The pay is better than my mall job, plus I get free coffee, which is basically essential for survival at this point. My manager is this chill woman who lets me adjust my schedule when I need to for college applications. Yeah, that's right, I'm finally applying to colleges for the spring semester. So here I am, 3 weeks into my new life, and it's like I can finally breathe again. I'm not naive enough to think everything's going to be perfect, but for the first time in years, the future actually looks bright. I'm not just surviving anymore, I'm starting to live. And honestly, it feels pretty damn good.